It is Locked On Jazz for the 23rd of August. Feels like an NBA season's right around the corner. Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Colin Sexton, all wondering what's happening next. FIBA World Cup taking place with all sorts of Jazz involvement. And the community is live on a special Monday live edition of Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on...
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast app you use. We'd love to have you involved all the time. And if you're on YouTube, thumbs up the program, thumbs up that we're live, little hashtag your team every day in the chat room to let us know that you're out there and a part of the community. So feel free to drop that in there. Hope you're doing great. I had a really cool weekend. I just kind of connected with everyone. I stopped by the facility on Friday and got to spend some time with Alex Jensen before Alex left to go to the USA basketball team. This is a big deal. So to qualify for the Olympics, you play in these world things, and Alex is leading the US team right now. So this is a really important, big deal step for Alex Jensen's career. Someone we've watched since Viewmont High School, and to grow up and as a youth, and then with Majerus, and obviously was a candidate for the Jazz job. But this is a really important major step for him in his career. Now, it's a hard team to put together. It's a bunch of G Leaguers and things of that sort that you're trying to meld together and make them suddenly become a basketball team. Some of the names, Pargo and some other names like that, you'll probably understand. But, they play the 25th against Uruguay. They play the 29th against Colombia, then Mexico, Venezuela, and Panama. And so these are actually, USA Basketball America Cup. This is actually a pretty big deal. Jody Meeks, you might remember. Patrick McCaw played with the Warriors, I think, and won a championship, if I remember correctly. I think Norris Cole, who played with Miami, is there. And then there's a whole camp going on right now that includes a few guys who've had some little Jazz snippets along the way. But so Alex Jensen will be coaching that team, assisted by Wojnarowski, Steve Wojo from Maryland, Nathan Peavy, the Jazz G League coach. Prior to this year, I think that they've switched G League coaches since the takeover of Will Hardy. So kind of cool, but worth, and spend some time with AJ. He's just the best. And got an opportunity to see him. Saw Brian Bailey, Jazz assistant coach. Saw Isaiah Wright, our strength and conditioning coach, who ran the Alta Cirque series this weekend. What a stud! Unbelievable. I don't know if you've caught that. Go look it up. Go look up the Cirque series. You want to talk about people that are just beasts. That was incredible. He actually did the snowbird one too, which I didn't know, but I looked it up. So congratulations to Isaiah. That is truly awesome. So anyway, it was just really cool. Then I actually ended up seeing Vince LaGarza yesterday. Saw Eric Waters, former Jazz trainer, and Vince LaGarza is now an assistant coach with the Milwaukee Bucks. So it just kind of felt a little bit NBA-ish. Felt like things are going on. Guys are getting ready, taking their final steps to get ready for the season. Everyone's revving up. So kind of a little bit of excitement in all of that that's going on. And so really, neat to see and feel that a little bit. It's kind of why I felt like doing a live show and getting it all together. Good morning to Bryce and Jace and Derek. Jace with a hashtag your team every day. Throw it in there. And to JR, it looks like, and Matthew are all there. Matthew puts up in the chat room, New York made a recent offer of Evan Fournier, Obi Toppin, additional salary, 2 unprotected first-round picks. Jazz asking price must be higher than that. I don't think 2 unprotected picks is going to get this done. And I think somebody else will at some point come into a deal that's better than that. I do. It's an interesting one we probably should look into as we kind of continue on this and drop it all as we kind of keep looking at it is, looking back at teams like Orlando and at Sacramento, it'd be probably a daunting series, but teams that have gone through massive rebuilds that haven't ever gotten through it, I brought it up on Friday. I mean, I just think Orlando's got to make a move here at some point. Like, are they just going to stay with this same mold that they've had the entire time? And it seems like they have now accumulated a few pieces, extra pieces, and the move should be to make a trade. I've said this a lot. Like, I think this model of trying to add as many draft picks as you possibly can at one time, have all of them come up together at the same time, is a super, super difficult model by which to hold a team together, to have team chemistry. And so at some point in that process, you have to decide, okay, Chet Holmgren, Josh Giddey, yes, and then move other pieces to bring something in. I'm not certain, time will tell. It feels to me like that's where Detroit is. Detroit hit. They've got Cade Cunningham with the number 1 pick. It's going to be great. They have Jaden Ivey, who they're super excited about. He's got to play. And they got Durant in this draft. They have Sadiq Bey, who maybe a viable NBA starter. They've got some pieces. It feels like they probably are doing one more year of this. But then I would say, and maybe they haven't accumulated enough pieces because they didn't have the draft stock coming in. But they, I think, believe that they can go get free agents. The other question to me, if I was, Oklahoma City or Houston, somewhere in this process, and they're both 2 or 3 years in, I think you have to start, and Orlando's 13 years in, you have to start trading those pieces to go bring in your next piece. And that's, I think, how this ideally works. And it's probably worth, going to look at how whether or not these things work or not, or how they've worked and how they haven't. I mean, how they work is you go get Giannis, right? Or you go get LeBron. And those are pretty fortunate moments. The other one that's super interesting, or you get Luka, right? Dallas got Luka. The other one that's super interesting is, like, what is success? That was one of the conversations I had this week. Like, are we just all like, one of the coaches I was with this weekend said to me, like, what, are we all just failures? Like, are we all just failures in the sense that you, if you don't win a title, you're just purely a failure? And so, what is the value of building the 50-win team that we had? I mean, that gets to the argument of, if you just had kept Rudy and won 50 games every year, but with no chance to win a title, would have that been all right? And clearly, I've said it as a play-by-play announcer who just wants to tell a story for you. That's a fun story to tell. It was clear that as a fan base, a franchise, an ownership, a front office, and a players and coaches, that probably was not a model that anybody else truly wanted to follow, other than the silly play-by-play announcer who likes, who just likes good entertainment on a given night. But there is something, this is just an awfully hard circumstance in trying to figure out how you're going to win and the routes in which you're going to win and whether you have any success. And obviously for the Jazz, I think one of the bigger issues was just the utter lack of flexibility, the utter lack of just sitting on their hands at the trade deadline, unable to do anything, sitting there in the draft night, unable to even get involved, and then sitting there at free agency, unable to do anything, that they simply had to create an element. It's interesting, by the way, as I walk around town, I feel like I'm bumping into like 4 different types of fans on the Donovan front. Nate just touched on one of them in the chat room. So I'll share the 4 different types of fans. And if you got any, I'll take some questions live in the chat room as we just decided to do a fun live show. We'll do more and more live shows as the season goes on. It's always fun. And I've actually figured out how to do it with the graphics and everything. I'm just an old guy trying to figure out modern technology. So we'll talk about the 4 different questions I seem to get everywhere I go right now. If anyone who recognizes me or knows if I'm wearing this big Jazz note, maybe that's why. And of about the Jazz and where we are. So we'll continue with that. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located out in Woods Cross, also located in Logan and in Linden. Great to have them involved. The Chevy lineup of trucks, just unbelievable. We all know the Colorado and the Silverado. The Silverado is the lazy boy chair of all trucks. It is just so smooth, so comfortable, so powerful, so awesome. And a great SUV lineup as well. It's all at the Logan store or the Woods Cross store. I think I said Linden. That's where I was the other day when I finally picked up my Murdoch Hyundai Ioniq 5. I got a little special treatment. Thank you to Blake for getting me set up. That car is incredible, by the way. If you want to get on a waiting list for a car, that is the one. That car is incredible. Anyway, it's all at Murdoch Chevy. Also, the Ioniq is over at Murdoch Hyundai. I'll talk more about it, but pretty wild and pretty cool there. So why did Truebill change its name to Rocket Money? You wonder, Truebill is now backed by the Rocket Company. It's grown from a bill management app into a full-on personal finance empowerment tool that helps 3.4 million people with budgeting, lowering bills, canceling subscriptions, and more, saving each of their members an average of $700 a year. I was telling you the whole time when I had Truebill that I found it to be much more interesting than just canceling subscriptions, and that's why they have now become Rocket Money. With all the growth comes that new evolution of Truebill story, a new name, and it's Rocket Money. I've told you about Truebill that it notifies me on payments. It notifies me on how we're spending, if our spending's up, if our spending's down, all sorts of things, plus all the subscriptions. Start canceling unused subscriptions and save money at rocketmoney.com/NBA. That's rocketmoney.com/NBA. Download the app from the App Store, Apple Store, or Google Play Store. It's really interesting. It's a way to manage your money, look at various accounts, organize your stuff. I found it worthwhile. Rocket Money now, rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, here are the 4 people that I've bumped into. I'm at Rich's Bagels the other day, good old legendary Utah company, Rich's Bagels. And, it's the, so it sure seems we're going to trade Donovan. Like, that one. That's the first one. We're going to trade Donovan. And you're like, yeah, it kind of seems like it. Then there's we need to trade Donovan, like with a little vigor. That guy's like decided that guy or female, that one's really in. Like the first one's a little bit like, I guess we're going to trade Donovan. Like, oh, well. The next one is like we need to trade Donovan. Like there's a little bitterness to it. There's a little, it's interesting to me. I have no concept of where that would possibly come from. He's only, shown up, played, been consistent, done everything for us. Then there's the third one, which is why is this happening person, which I get it. Like we were winning 50 games. We were really good. We thought we had Donovan and Rudy forever. Or as close to ever. And it went for the number 1 record in the NBA to kind of this quick turn. So why is this happening? Is the third person I run into. And my fourth person that I run into, I think is my favorite right now. And it's basically, feel free in the chat room to let me know which one of these 4 you fall under. And that one is, how is Rudy Gobert going to work out in Minnesota? It's like, I don't even know, if we're getting like Dr. Phil and deep psychology, the first one is like the first person, we're going to trade Donovan, when's it happening kind of person, is the one who's kind of conceded to like, oh, this is happening, and I see you, and I know you're David Locke, so I'm just going to say that to you. And I find, that one's like the kind of like, they're not sure what to say. I think they're not sure if they're happy or not. They might get it. They're not sure. The second one is like weird to me. Like, okay, you're just bitter and life sucks, and you think you're such a big deal that you take your new Bronco like truck that you have and decide you can park it in the handicap space when you're not handicapped, or you're going to park. Not that I saw this specifically happen in front of Rich's Bagels, that there's 73 open parking spots, but you're so cool that you actually can just park it in the red line and block everyone else coming through because your little Bronco truck is so great that you can do that. And then you're going to be bitter at Donovan. Like that guy. Okay. That guy. I got that one figured out, I guess. No, I literally saw that this weekend. That was not hypothetical in any way, shape, or form. And then the third one is I do like it. It's like, this is not what I anticipated. Like, why is this happening? Like sadness, I guess, or just understanding. And then the fourth one to me is super fun. Like if from a Dr. Phil standpoint, because I think that the fourth one is like, I don't really want to confront my own reality of what has happened to my team and what I'm about to embark upon and experience yet. I'm sure I will, and I'll enjoy it, and it'll be a good journey, and it will be interesting to watch us build it up, and it's probably our best chance to win, and it's probably even the right thing to do. But I want to talk about Rudy because I love Rudy, and I kind of love that fourth one. And I'm getting that one a fairly decent amount of how is Rudy going to work out. So feel free. I see Lee says he's person number 3. Dalen says that he's equal parts 1, 3, and 4. You're part and not you're not part 2. If you're part 2 and you have enough guts to admit that you're parking your Bronco in a red zone and that you're so much cooler than everyone else on earth that you actually don't need to park where the lines are and you can block everyone else's traffic. You actually have a lot of guts right now because I've characterized that fairly negatively. Jay Skidmore says he's number 4. Taylor says he's number 4 as well over in the chat room. Michael Hunter says person number 4 is a realist. Jazz will trade Donovan and not be good. Season lackluster. Wishing for Rudy's success. Lee Christensen. Oh, this one's interesting. I didn't put this one in here. He says, I understand trading Rudy, but I don't understand trading Donovan. It's funny is if I'm being totally honest, I might have been the other way on that one. Like if you had told me at the beginning of the year, I had to choose one or the other of those. I could only do one. I'm not sure that's actually that's actually a very good approach, by the way. I want to point out that like only doing one might not have been the greatest answer. And that is, I think I might have gone the other way, right? Because at that point, I think you could, I think Rudy gets you 50 wins. And so but I also do think there's a legitimate discussion of whether or not 40 million on Rudy gives you a chance to win a championship or not. Like, I think that's a very legitimate conversation. His lack of offensive skills, but also just the way the league's evolved offensively. And so I probably would have done that. Like if I'm in a room and I have to do one or the other, again, doing neither or both is not a choice in this conversation. I probably would have been the other way, that I take just the 50 wins. It's interesting. I mean, let me go back in the chat room because there's a good one right now. I think there was something about Orlando that I saw fly through. But great job in the chat. This is why we go live. I love this interaction. I love seeing this. And it also helps the next person who watches it on YouTube and gets the chat room that's going on, kind of gives them a dual experience on that. Also on the podcast, hopefully we're doing a good enough job of serving you both of that. Thumbs up or good chat room, 5 stars are always appreciated on all of these. Just a fun exercise. What if Utah offers 7-8 picks for Durant? How good is Beverly, Donovan, Bojan, KD, and Jared Vanderbilt? Well, we still have Mike Conley. Maybe we're giving up Conley to get the numbers, probably is what you're doing on that. That's an interesting concept. I am not completely... One of the things I think in this process that's to the Jazz advantage, and I think it's probably unlikely, but I still think it's to the Jazz advantage, is time. Because what Danny Ainge has done with the Gobert trade is he's actually opened the door to multiple routes. The national media makes it sound like the only route available right now is that of trading Donovan Mitchell to the Knicks. Or maybe to Orlando or someone else. I think that's the likely scenario. Probably because I've just been beat down by the national media. But I do think there's also, what he did do is he opened up a scenario that if another star player were to become available, or a player that really moves our meter, we could actually make that move, right? We could actually now take some of the draft picks and things we've acquired. We couldn't do it until September 1, I think it is. But we could now take some of the picks that were acquired by the Jazz in the Minnesota deal and some of those players and move them to go acquire another player. And if you recall, like early last week, we did this on one of the shows, that when the year started, the concept was, I thought, the first thing the Jazz are doing is looking around the league with Conley, Bojan, Royce, Clarkson, whomever, anyone but Rudy and Don, and saying, all right, what can we go get? What can we do to add to their team? And the answer, we ran through, I think we got through all 29 other teams, was very little, right? Like when we finally got down to it, if we were going to try to make the big move, we came down to Dame Lillard, which didn't, Kristaps Porzingis, Tobias Harris, and I think we had a fourth one, but none of them were like, Kristaps was a weird idea that we all kind of fell in love with because there was nothing else. Dame was a little strange and going to be super expensive. And then Tobias Harris is a nice player, but like how much better than Bojan is he? So that's kind of where we were. And I'm not sure we could have gotten any of those done. And so then the next move was you were hamstrung, tied up with all of your moves, nothing to do. And the Jazz make this next move, which seemingly is the beginning of a rebuild, which makes sense. You got a rebrand, you got a new GM, you got a new owner. Rebuild. Makes total sense. And frankly, you have Donovan's kind of free agency pending in 3 years. It seems like it's going to be a hard one to keep. But at that time, once the Jazz had made that run around the league for those guys, there was nothing else for them to do at that point. They were either rolling this team back, and there was a moment, if you recall this summer, where I was like, holy cow, crap, are we rolling this team back with minor variations, just a new head coach? Like, seemed possible, seemed kind of insane, but seemed possible. And then we made the Rudy deal. So now we have flexibility, and we could actually, in theory, go either way, which, again, I think it's probably a little unlikely, but to the point of I think, I can't see what that name is, but on that idea of, like, do you trade for Durant? I think Durant's probably outlandish, but it's still kind of a fun concept that the longer this goes, and maybe somebody else starts to have problems or other players become available, I think it's advantageous to the Jazz because they actually now have the flexibility to do multiple different things with their team. I do think, hey, I'm not trying to fool anyone. I think the likely answer, but you have Donovan, you have Durant, you have Kyrie Irving, you have Colin Sexton. They're all out there sitting there. They all should get moved at some point. But if, let's say the other three do and Donovan doesn't, like, what's the new landscape? What might be possible? If you're listening live or if you're just listening, feel free to hit hashtag your team every day in the chat room so that I know you were there. I come back and look at it all the time. Dustin says, I'm number 3 and I'm not happy about it. Number 3 in our list of 4 personalities is why is this happening? Nobody has owned to being number 2, which I appreciate. Maybe none of our listeners are number 2. Because if you're listening, you're actually smart. So then maybe, okay, having some fun with you on that. Let's touch on a few things that are going on with Jazz players around the league and the rest for you. Today's show is brought to you in part by Intercap Lending. Steve Carter is the best tip of the hat. I mentioned it last week to Brock and what they did. Actually, worth mentioning, like Jared Vanderbilt did this weekend too. But Brock and Intercap Lending does such amazing work in the community. They probably, we just have such great philanthropic people in Utah. And Brock Worthen and the crew over at Intercap are doing it again. They have handed out nearly 1,200 fully stocked backpacks at 2 Title I schools this year already. And they also have a big event coming up August 27th at the Plaza at Rio Tinto, the Do It for Drake Foundation. Go to the backgroundfoundation.org benefit concert. That's the backgroundfoundation.org. Tickets are purchasing there. Really great work by Intercap in the community. And then there's Steve Carter. Steve Carter's our own personal loan officer. And the best part about what goes on with Steve is the constant reviews and interaction we get. JC emailed me the other day. He says, he was actually talking about a bunch of Hyundai stuff and said to me, I've used Steve Carter and it was amazing. And that is the single most common thing I get from anyone all the time is that Steve Carter just gives one time after another. I go back to Mitch, who emailed me and said 2 years ago we refinanced with Steve Carter. I was so grateful for your recommendation. And then he turned around and is buying a Murdoch Hyundai. So that's actually kind of a fun transfer on that. So it's super great. And there have been times where I've been a little late and asked Steve to jump on. He jumps on immediately. The mortgage world's a little crazy right now, so make sure you get involved. But that's over at Intercap Lending, great sponsor of Locked On. Steve Carter, feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com. I'll just set you up with that meeting. Or if you'd like to, don't want me involved and you want to just call Steve, do make sure you mention that you're with Locked On Jazz. You'll get the corporate discount. Steve's number for you is 385-800-8528. That's 385-800-8528. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. All right, bunch of World Cup stuff going on that's cool. Just so you know, so the FIBA World Cup's going on. Jordan is playing for the Philippines, which I think is much more of a cultural experience for him. They don't have great chances of doing awesome things, but he has that tie and his mom's Filipino. I do think it's why Jordan's so incredible is this kind of mixed race, raised up in a house with multiple different ethnicities, growing up in San Antonio, and you watch Jordan and he's just a chameleon. He can play from one group to the next. He can hang in an LA sports nightclub. He can be out camping in a van. He can be chilling with Joe Ingles and his family. He can be doing he's just amazing. I think this is really cool. I can't wait to talk to Jordan about the life experience he's having, connecting with that part of him, the part that's hidden, right? Because in our society, if you're black, you're black. And, he, in his mind, I'm sure is 50% Filipino and 50% black. And then it's kind of this intermix of how do you find yourself? I've got some experience with the mixed race kid thing. So I think that's it's pretty interesting to watch them try to find himself in the midst of all this. Bojan is playing for Croatia. He is on the Croatian national team. There was a little question of whether that was going to happen. Simone Fontecchio is playing for Italy. He had 18 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists the other day against the Czech Republic. They're in the same group. So Luca, one of our international scouts, is heading out there to go see him. I saw Luca. I saw Dave Fizdale the other day as well. That was super fun. Had a great conversation with Steven Swartz and Luca and Dave Fizdale when I was over at the facility. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is playing for Canada. That's kind of a name we've all forgotten about a little bit. Acquired in the Joe Ingles trade last year. Great amount of skill. Has to figure out how he's going to be at best in the NBA. Was one of the single most inefficient players in all of the NBA last year, but has great skill, has the ability to beat someone one-on-one, has a lot of the pieces you need out of a player in the league. So we'll be interesting to see what they can do and do there. And then Leandro Balmero is playing for Argentina. So we've got, Clarkson, Bojan, Fontecchio, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Balmero all playing. And then, yes, Rudy Gobert is playing for France, and we can watch him if you're person number 4. So it'll be interesting to see. Fontecchio is interesting because he averaged 22 points a game at the Olympics for Italy. He is their primary scorer. He's got to play one way there and then come back and play another way a little bit for the U.S. Few other notes I wanted to throw out there. Congratulations to Big T. He is joining the Tabernacle Choir as part of the Music and Spoken Word weekly series. So congratulations to Big T. I miss Big T. I thought there was a really cool story. 2 of them. One was Jared Vanderbilt, I mentioned a moment ago. He was part of a group that in Houston gave out 500 backpacks to kids the other day. So Jared Vanderbilt, he says he grew up in a kind of a tough neighborhood and didn't have resource to these things, being able to give them back. I don't know Jared, haven't met him yet, but that was a neat introduction to see this weekend. And then I thought this was a really great story. And this is happening more and more. We saw it with Malik Beasley when he talked with us in the media the other day, but Jared Wiseman opened up about going to see having therapy and doing therapy right now, and how much that's helping him through all of his struggles. It's a crazy concept that somehow this was a negative in our society. We're throwing 20-year-old kids, 20-year-olds, 21, 22, 23, 24-year-old kids, millions of dollars, putting them in front of 20,000 people. They're addicted to their phones. Like literally, we had a guy in Major League Baseball have his phone fall out while sliding into third base the other day. These kids are no different than your teenager. And they're as equally addicted as, and they're going in at halftime. It's the first thing they're grabbing, and they're getting the comments that you suck, and they come off the court, and all they get from, you're the worst, or you're the greatest. Neither of these are healthy, and they're having this incredibly unhealthy environment by which at a young age they're getting dopamine hits all the time from that. Plus, just the constant evaluation, endlessly. It is not a healthy mental environment. So the fact that we actually have some players that are now taking the time to see a therapist, to talk to someone else, talk to someone outside the team is greatly, it's frankly insane that we didn't do this before. And sometimes these stories are, they're sad. Like I know a story, I've been in the league for 22 years or whatever, 25, 30. This is my 30th NBA season, maybe. I know of a player who's, going up, having all sorts of major, not tiny, minor, like major mental issues and complete, I don't know the right medical term of a breakdown, but I mean, hallucinations and things of that nature. Well, no one wanted to say anything because it was a free agent year. Family was telling him not to say anything. Team was ordered strictly to not say anything. That's because it was a free agent year and everyone needed their money. We've got to get to a point where you actually hear the players having therapy and you want to give them more money because it means that they're working to improve themselves. I mean, I was listening to an incredible podcast the other day on the Power of the Brain, Carl Morris podcast, the Brain Boosters, which is predominantly golf, but incredible stuff about just, how much of our performance in anything in life is brain compared to muscle, and how much you're trying to care for that. I mean, it was one of the things on putting was really incredible, right? Like there's nothing about like a putt that someone can't hit. Like a golf ball, you actually have to have the skill to hit it, but an actual putt, like I can take a 6-year-old out and they can hit a putt. So then it's really getting to be a little bit of like, well, so how do you get your mind-body connection to work? And then just all these other things. So I think it's a really interesting, I thought it was great just to see another like Malik B. I'm all in on Malik Beasley solely from his interview with us when he talked about, the mistakes he's made, openly admitted them, and trying to get better. It's neat to see James Wiseman talk about it. And frankly, I'm certain that not all players will go, but if I was running an NBA franchise, I would just actually make it a mandatory part of every single one of my players' weeks. And instead of an hour of practice court, they're spending an hour, or 2 or 3 with someone. If they don't want to show, that's the same thing as them not showing. If they don't want to talk, that's fine, but it's like the same thing as going to practice and just not participating. And I would be couching it the same way. I think it's probably that important for a franchise. All right, that is Locked On Jazz today. It's kind of an interesting thought to leave the show on. We probably should discuss that more. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm out this week. I'm going to go on a biking trip with my son before he leaves to college. We're going to take the van and go bike around. We were going to Oregon, but our trail's on fire. So we're heading out to Idaho and Wyoming. So I wasn't going to even take my computer, but I did decide this morning that I probably should at least take my computer in case something happens. All right, talk to you soon. Thanks so much. We'll chat next week, and we'll be closer and closer. And we'll probably do an interview series with some of our guys. We'll hear from Thurl and Ron and see what everyone's doing. Thanks so much. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.